Trump canceled and defunded federal diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and other state-funded racism schemes.
When I hear criticisms about DEI, it really makes me understand that these folks always already believe we're unqualified and that they are more worthy of the positions that we have. And I think the call's coming from inside the house, because if we really unpackage this, you feel me, the reason why we have DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, is because there were different practices and trends that allow for white people to always be accepted in the places, regardless if there was a person that was a color, a black person or a woman or a trans person that was more qualified than them. It's the reason why we had so many mediocre presidents in history of America, because they did not have much competition. Many of them had to compete against many mediocre other white men that was probably born with a silver spoon in their mouth, and or, you feel me, were career politicians, or there was people that was born into families, you know what I'm saying, that was in politics, and they were literally handed things through nepotism. See, the thing that I always think about is that every time I was at the University of Oklahoma, actually before I get into that, it's important to get some background information and context on this little personal story. I think that can illustrate how DEI be having folks lost in the sauce of things that is empirically false, and that they be projecting a inferiority, fake superiority complex. At the University of Oklahoma, it's important to acknowledge the state of Oklahoma is one of the last ranked educations in our country. I'm talking about 48, 49, you feel me? So the individuals I was going to school with, mainly at the University of Oklahoma, was, a lot of, most of the part, poor, middle-class white people that were products of the public school system there in Oklahoma, and some of them with the private school. You see what I'm saying? The thing about it, though, is that I had a higher GPA in high school than a lot of them did, and I went to a school that had a better education than they did. It's from Texas. You know what I'm saying? We was in like the 30s. You feel me? So not at the end, you feel me? But I think at that time we was in the better, you know what I'm saying? But to have people at the university assume that either I was there as an athlete or I was some affirmative action, you know what I'm saying? To me, it's all a part of the complex. They're now using DEI as a guise to push forward.
I can't stand that DEI shit. All it does is gives a bunch of if you know what I'm talking about, a bunch of positions that they do not deserve. I think Becky and Bobby Joe, that they work harder inherently than those minorities. That's what we're going to call them. Minorities.
Like, I know people are going to be in the comment section saying that DEI really wasn't for us. And studies showed that there were a lot of white women that benefited from it, and more white women that benefited from it. And it's just like, even if that is true, it's not being used, that fact is not being used to fuel a lot of this anti-DEI legislation. The idea that's being able to be pushed around this is the exact facade they were able to build around the Affordable Healthcare or Affordable Healthcare Act. You know what I'm saying? They renamed it Obamacare because they understood that remix, that policy, you feel me, would make a lot of people feel a certain way because they do not want to have the same thing that black folks have. So pointing out that empirically, you know what I'm saying, white women were the main beneficiaries of DEI, it does not negate that the assault on DEI is being used, you feel me, because folks already had this little predisposition for anti-blackness and anti-black sentiments. So whether we're blaming helicopter crashes, bridges falling down, you know what I'm saying, or your white cousin that didn't get into the organization or that didn't get the job because they believe a DEI hire got there, it really just blows my mind. It really makes me also think about how really any piece of legislation or concept that can be framed as giving black people political, social, economic mobility, it can easily be made into something that's bad.
Here's something right here that y'all should know. Before I was a social media, influencer, before y'all knew who I was a diversity, equity, and inclusion trainer for faculty and staff at the University of Oklahoma. And before I was blowing up on TikTok, I was being booked to do keynotes and workshop facilitations around diversity, equity, and inclusion in terms of race, class, gender, ability, sexuality. So now that, the current climate of social media has been turned upside down, at least for those people that, primarily went on TikTok or built on TikTok, It really has the creator economy, quote unquote, or the creator ecosystem turned upside down. But the reason why I was able to jump into being a social media content creator so easily is because I feel like the university will always be there. My undergraduate degree is in African and African American studies. And though that department has always been facing, you know what I'm saying, having funds lost and having funds taken away from them, in this Trump era, is really looking like accelerating the loss of funds and taking the funds. You know what I'm saying? So that's where my expertise in. That's being influenced right now, impacted right now. You know, my master's degrees, human relations, adult and higher education, still dealing with concepts around privilege, equity, power, supremacy, access, you know, equity, inclusion, diversity. You know, other master's degrees in human relations, still around the same concepts. I got 2 master graduate certificates. 1, women and gender studies. Definitely getting defunded. You know what I'm saying? Oh, and if you see this video and you got a problem with that, we can debate about it. You know what I'm saying? Other graduate certificate, human diversity development. The ways that I'm impacted and the ways that, you know, the current climate got my mind all over the place. Hey, man. In the words of Bun B, keep on pushing. A lot of old folks say, keep on living. That's what we're doing right now.
Diversity, equity, and inclusion. To me, it exposes how a lot of things that us millennials uniquely were taught about America was always already a goddamn lie. From the idea that America is a melting pot and that we, you know what I'm saying, and that we celebrate diversity and we love immigrants because it's a country of immigration, even though it's always interracial indigeneity. I'm gonna get that into another video. It's almost like every concept about patriotism, about togetherness, about unity, you feel me? It was a lie, you know, especially when you think about we gotta have diversity of thought. You feel me? As a matter of fact, today while I was setting up, you know what I'm saying, and trying to clean my little space up to record this video for y'all, I thought economically. You feel me? From a capitalistic standpoint, diversifying one's portfolio is always seen as a great thing because you need to have diversity within, you feel me, the way that you're making money in within your cash flows. You feel me? Diversify is literally another, you know what I'm saying, conjugate, or you feel me, another, you know, what's the word? A derivative. I gotta think about it, you know what I mean? Let my editor, you know what I'm saying, put it on the screen right here, the word I'm looking for. You know I'm looking where I'm looking for. To diversify, you know what I'm saying? The root of it is also like diversity, and it means the same thing. So to me, it's funny that the concept of diversity or diversifying one's portfolio or diversifying one's financial space is seen as something good. But when we diversify a market, a job space, a classroom is seen as something that's being bad. And to me, it always shows that, you know, so many people have such a hierarchical understanding when it comes to how Black people are positioned. It's really like exposing how us gaining incrementally anything is always seen as an assault to them or always seen as oppression to them. And when I say them, in many instances, I'm just talking about, you know, white conservatives and their non-white, you know what I'm saying, accomplices, you feel me? Because, you know, white supremacy and the way that they like to say that DEI is devoid of work ethic and devoid of hard work. It's just like, hey, man, because the question always begs, why do we need diversity, equity, and inclusion? And before we get into that, actually, it reminded me of this conversation I had with the great Stacey Abrams, where I feel like she was eloquently able to break down what DEI is. You know what I'm saying? Here it is right here.
We've been, in the last decade, sort of fed this bill of goods that, and in fact, it's not even the last decade, last 5 years, there's been this increasing attack on DEI. One, because if they can demonize it, if they can take the initialism and make it something bad, then they can turn us against it. But it's also this idea that it is only about Black people getting into Harvard, or it is only about someone taking something from you, as opposed to what it really is, which is 248 years of making this country what it says it wants to be. That for 248 years, we have had to, and we used to learn this. They've taken some of this out of the books because, well, it works. But we know that Reconstruction, the 13th, 14th, 15th Amendments, those are DEI laws. Title I, which paid for you to go to school, for me to go to school. When public education truly became public, because poor children for the first time, because of Title I education, had the funding to go to the schools that were supposed to be for them. That was DEI. That the women's rights movement, the civil rights movement, the labor rights movement, the Indian American movement, all of those movements, the Americans with Disabilities Act, those are all DEI laws. And so to your point, if you don't want someone to have an education, one, you tell them that, I love your phrase, this cosmetic diversity. It's okay if it happens in February and you want to learn about being Black. It's okay if it happens in March and you want to learn about being a woman. It's okay if it happens in May and you want to learn about being Latino, but we don't want you to carry that with you into anything else. And so part of the attack and part of the intention is to undo what they successfully did in Bryan, Texas, which is convince you that you had the right to more, and that the corrective action of DEI made it possible for you to imagine it.
So now that we think about diversity, equity, and inclusion, and we've been able to give some context to diversity, equity, and inclusion, think to yourself now, why is it being criminalized?
It's subtle, but it's racism.
From a definition concept standpoint. And also think about the people in your life that have been able to benefit from concepts around diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then think about the way that the assault on diversity, equity, and inclusion is being extrapolated to being able to say we're not going to celebrate Black history on the federal level. And then think about how a lot of people is just coming over to kiss the ring. To me, diversity, equity, and inclusion shows that Black people were always this fungible object that could be used to, forward initiatives that will mainly give profits to the institutions and organizations at the expense of making some pretty Black face a tokenized example of diversity, equity, and inclusion. The fact that we had so many organizations wanting to present themselves as great, as great, benevolent, white corporations and organizations and businesses that was able to fall in line and monetize the trend of Black Lives Mattering and want to say we want to have Black people in positions of power and leadership and put more Black products in the store. Hey, an executive order really just applies to the executive office. And an executive order is not necessarily automatically made into a law outside of the executive order. The fact that we can acknowledge companies like Costco that can have where them and their stockholders just reject anti-DEI legislation, and you got Walmart and Target and Apple and all these other organizations being like, we're moving our DEI. It's like, hey, y'all never cared about Black people. It was trendy and cool to be performative around saying you care about the livelihood of Black people and you want to do something about the suffering politically, socially, economically, whether we're talking about denial of bank loans or whether we're talking about the denial of opportunities to be able to do business. You see what I'm saying? A lot of those companies were also a part of the exclusion that was from Black people having our products in stores and or being in positions of leadership. Because I always think of what the great Stokely Carmichael said in relationship to the Civil Rights Acts. He said the Civil Rights Acts, you feel me? It was for white folks. It wasn't for Black people. Black people have been knowing that we can drink out that water fountain. Black people have been knowing that we can go vote. We've been knowing that we can walk through the front door of a restaurant or a school. White folks didn't know. So they had to create some laws. You feel me? They had to create some policies to tell them, hey, white people, Black folks are able to do this. It doesn't mean that we didn't have the capability and we didn't know how to do it. You feel me? And I think that it was such masterful narrative that's taught this country that the reason why Black folks weren't doing things historically or in the past is because we can't do it. We couldn't do it. We're capable of doing it. It's just like, one of the great American fallacies, especially when it comes to, the Black experience. And that's really what's at assault right now. They used to say thug and that was a substitute for Black. They used to say, you feel me, woke, that was a substitute for Black. You know what I'm saying? They used to say CRT, that was a substitute for Black. Now they saying DEI. Let's really think about this. Do we think that it is coincidental that the concept of critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, being woke, Black history, and quote-unquote progression is all tied together? You think it's coincidental or ironic? Because I don't think so. I think that it was a masterful plan to be able to group all these concepts together that can share any light about how, oppressive this country has been or how institutionalized racism is still a part of, you feel me, what's going on. I think that, it's not keeping it real. During Martin Luther King Day, there are usually a lot of quotes that the FBI and a lot of our favorite conservatives love to post. Those endorsements of the MLK quotes are always very puzzling to me because it's like, how can you celebrate Martin Luther King without wanting to talk about the things that he was trying to advocate against, the things that he was trying to overcome, the things that was getting in the way of this dream that we always talk about that he had that we love to sensationalize. And then think about how the notions of diversity, equity, and inclusion and being able to be judged by, the quality of your character instead of the content of your skin color is really being like betrayed. And then think about how being able to co-opt or appropriate messages and concepts has always been a part of design of, I feel like she's saying white supremacy, but really just, American patriot capitalist Christianity. You know what I'm saying? Instead of saying white supremacy, I'm gonna say that. Like that's what we're thinking about. That's what we're talking about.
Taking it back to the good old days, where we always knew them blacks could not work harder than us and knew that them blacks only good to be in the back door and them blacks is only good to be we want them to be, not in the front of the class and not leading. It's just taking orders.
Think about the concept of like these folks saying DEI stand for didn't earn it. Meanwhile, most of them is born silver spoon, or they done got so many different initiatives and pat on the backs and breaks that they think that is normal for them. But when you entitled to feeling like you are supposed to be, getting jobs, or you feel entitled to thinking you're supposed to get opportunities, it's normalized of you getting it, and when you don't get it, you feel like you being, you being discriminated against. I don't know, man. The thing that really pissed me off, really just like, I think, I've always felt, even in college, when folks came at me talking about affirmative action or talking about diversity, equity, inclusion hires, whether I was a professor, a director of debate, or a college student, it's like, I'm more qualified than you. My grades is higher than yours. DEI being bad, And to me, it also shows the call comes from inside the house, that every accusation is a confession. When y'all say victimization, when y'all say a person, makes up and looks for reason to be victimized, or they make up situations and realities to say they're being discriminated against, every single reason that anti-DEI sentiments is being justified, it's based on some notion of white victimization, or the idea that some privileged or well-qualified white man is being discriminated against because there has to be, hey man, too many of y'all is saying y'all qualified. I know you're products of some sorry-ass schools in inner city. I made sure that happened. I know that you don't even get that good of education when you go to higher, education, because, hey, I made sure them ain't even, funded that good. I made sure I jacked the price on your ass when you stay there. So some of y'all can't stay there. If you is staying there, you stressed out about how you gonna pay for it. But in spite of you working hard to be there, I'm gonna say that you being here is all a part of our DEI initiative. And that if we ain't had this initiative, your black ass wouldn't be here. But then I think more intersection, and that intersectionality is not just race. And when I was doing my DEI trainings, I had to really sit with diversity being about gender and race and sexuality and class and ethnicity and language, Different ways diversity, or really diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives are implicated in different industries and different spaces. It really blew my mind, especially when you think about the argument that a lot of conservatives make when it comes to being in liberal spaces. They say that they should be there. They say that, colleges are liberal hotbeds. Meaning that if it just had a more diversified space ideologically and in terms of political perspectives with more conservatism, then it'd be a cool space. You feel me? As a matter of fact, when to me, like when the Republican Party loves to parade their favorite tokenized black person, may it be some random, influencer from PragerU, or it may be, Candace Owens, or whatever the newest is saying these days, they are usually presented as a DEI hire or a DEI admit into the conservative party. And even that, they'll say we don't need DEI as bad because it gives too much specificity to identity, and it allows for different liberal and leftists to weaponize their identity. Now, though I had some criticisms for identity politics, it always blows my mind that you have a majority of the black conservative pages I've been to, they market themselves as such. Black conservatives, showing that they're a part of a DEI concept, even in the space they're going to. They're acknowledging that they are a minority in that space. They're acknowledging that them being in that space, is unique. That's the reason why they throw the black in many different instances in front of the Republican or the conservative. So a lot of this we see is just gaslighting. You know what I'm saying? Whether we're talking about victimization, whether we're talking about people that didn't earn it, whether we're talking about, meritocracy or the myth of it. When y'all, listen, I got many criticisms for, Vice President Kamala Harris. You know what I'm saying? But one thing I would not like I was never lost in the sauce in is anybody trying to say she unqualified, saying that she is a product of DEI. It's like, hey, so you think that her being in every branch of government has nothing to do with hard work at all, has nothing to do with her being able to suck up to the imperialist state, has nothing to do with her being able to master how to be more progressive and more neoliberal, more, imperialistic when it comes to deployment. You don't think that matters at all? Because to me, it seems like it matters. It's just like, hey, when Kamala Harris intellectually mopped the floor with Donald Trump, I'm talking about like took him to town. We seen then that he ain't about that. He ain't with it. You feel me? And to me, it's like the concept of DEI being bad is always correlated with the lack of experience. But then you have somebody like Donald Trump who was paraded and celebrated for having what? The lack of experience. Especially when you think about, hey, y'all said Barack Obama was a bad president because y'all felt that he lacked experience. He was a senator. This man, Trump, never held a political position before being the president, but that made him qualified to be the president. But they say DEI is bad. Have y'all seen any of these hearings? Have you seen any of the hearings of the people that Trump has picked to be a part of his cabinet or picked to be a part of his administration? Didn't earn it. Unqualified. You know what I'm saying? I'm talking about unqualified. And them even being able to be nominated in the positions like didn't earn it. Being a loyalist is a part of earning it. And it's just like, hey man, I got criticisms for also the way that the nonprofit industrial complex has been able to use concepts of DEI to be able to, line the pockets of many liberals and leftists while being able to, feed crumbs, to the communities they getting these grants for in the communities they claiming they service. Like that's also a part of this DEI thing, but they ain't they beef with it. They beef with it is that they believe that it's giving positions to people that are not worthy and or getting in the way of more qualified white folks. Growing up, I always heard the concept that we got to work 10 times harder to get the same thing or get half as things they have. Where it's ingrained into how you got to deal with your work being devalued and dealing with how you got to do more to prove a little bit less than what they doing, even though you're working harder. And that's literally we see like the reality still. So the pathology around DEI that says that we don't work hard and we just giving shit, everything that black people have right now, we didn't have to bleed for it. We didn't have to fight for it. Whether it was taking shit next to white folks, being able to drink out the same water fountain as white folks, being able to be educated in the same classroom as white folks, being able to vote like white folks. Everything I just named took literally blood, sweat, and tears. And these people have the nerve to say that much of the progress and mobility that black folks done fought for has come from shit being handed to us. And then the fungibility of black people is definitely well illustrated in how the different ways that affirmative action and diversity, equity, and inclusion is criminalized, ridiculed, pathologized, marginalized in every other instance in industry except for usually the military. Or how the military is usually able to uniquely fight and protest and advocate for, you want to ban the Tuskegee, little teaching lesson that we have in the military? We're gonna get it back. Because they need black representation in there. They need the morale of the soldiers to be there. You know what I'm saying? And what we know is the U.S. military is good at using black bodies, black force, black energy, black labor behind the military to be able to fight their wars. Whether we're talking about, it being for, some type of corporation against some natural resource, to be for the government being able to dictate, the control over the natural resource. So that's the reason why I believe they always have it where affirmative action bad, except for the military. Diversity, equity, inclusion bad. We're going to make an exception for this one right here in the military. It's like, yeah, it's because y'all feel like y'all always need black people to be able to fight for the rights or fight for, the corporate interests of America. That's what we've been doing since we've been here. The plantation was also a corporation. And it's just like, for some people that's been working here since we've been here, the notion that we don't work hard for anything is really like, it's blasphemy. Ending this video, ever since we stopped working for free, they've been trying to trivialize the way we work. Ever since we stopped working for free, they've started creating problems about how our work is always insufficient. DEI is bad because it discriminates against white people based on the color of their skin. DEI is bad because it makes white men feel bad about being men. DEI is bad because it makes too much space for trans people and queer people, and we ain't got time for that. But we can correlate all of our constituents and being able to be against this concept by saying it's doing too much for us. Interesting.
Think about this. When they say make America great again, and I'm trying to take us back in the past and them being able to overturn all these policies, everything they accuse DEI of being, they trying to drag us historically back to that place where white folks was just getting handed because they was white. Whether we talking about bank loans, jobs, goddamn admissions into universities, they literally received them exclusively because they was white. Being white was a qualifying characteristic in order to be able to get these resources, opportunity, and access. And they trying to take us back there. When we have a job market that was discriminating against women or discriminating against black folk, that was because it was giving a lot of unqualified white people those positions in spite of not giving them to the minorities they felt like were inherently unqualified. And that's what we got to sit with. We got to sit with recognizing that a lot of the history where they try to literally illustrate the superiority of white men and how they were much more intelligent and how they were much more strategic, hey, they were able to do that because they benefited on everything that you falsely accused DEI of. George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, they only had to compete against other mediocre white men to prove that they had the capacity, to prove they had the, the capabilities of leading the country. Let's face it, man. The stroke of a pen ain't never changed nobody's mind of thinking. Ain't never changed nobody's mode of thinking. So no matter how many pens they stroked, whether we talking about Emancipation Proclamation, or we talking about the 14th Amendment that gave citizenship, or we talking about the 15th Amendment that gave the right to vote, those stroke of the pens did not change the minds of the people that believed that black folks were never worthy of having any one of those things. Whether we're talking about freedom, whether we're talking about citizenship, or the right to be able to vote. And even right now, hey, all of these executive orders they passing and all these policies they passing to say DEI is bad, it's not going to change the concept or change the value that we have in diversifying space and place and thoughts. So it's really like we got to keep on fighting. And right now, you know what I mean? I said the last thing, but it's like the DEI sentiments in this DEI cultural war and how DEI is landed as a cultural war battle that's becoming monumental right now. I think it's a part of how the Civil War never really just ended. It's became a Cold War, and that Cold War really been going on for, a little over 150 years, 1865, and shit really since the Reconstruction era. And it's just like these new efforts of DEI, it's just trying to make sure that's the assault, and they're trying to make sure we, the South will rise again because we really getting outside of our culture, you feel me? They say it's heritage, not hate. And a part of the heritage of Southerners and the heritage of, white conservatives is making sure anything that black folks got, it benefits them first and foremost, and that anything that black folks got is things that they don't want or believe they ain't worthy of. Education is elevation. Did you enjoy this video? Did you find any of it to be educational or any of it to be, enlightening? If so, make sure you like, share, subscribe, and go on and get that share link and share it with like 3 or 4 friends, man. Go on and do it. Appreciate you.